Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments throughout the region, here in Israel and somewhat beyond, it's always important to remember that 532 days ago, on October 7th of 2023, Hamas and its terror affiliates in the Gaza Strip have launched an onslaught on southern Israel, kidnapping approximately 250 people, including elderly men, women, children, and infants, and 59 of them remain in Hamas captivity to date. Now, the situation is that ongoing hostilities in the Gaza Strip are somewhat intensifying, with a ground maneuver launched now in the northern part of the Strip. And on that and more, let's now turn to our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, set the stage for us.
So the Chief of General Staff of the IDF, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, along with the Shabak Chief, Ronen Bar, have visited the Southern Command and held an assessment there regarding the next phase in the operations, while the Minister of Defense, Israel Katz, came up with a message to Hamas, which is certain to be quite controversial in Israel and probably outside of Israel too. Katz warned Hamas that as long as it refuses to release any additional hostages as part of the outline suggested by presidential envoy Witkoff, Israel will take over more parts of the Gaza Strip and add them, he didn't use the word annex, but add them to its own territory. And also that the Israeli forces are driving the Palestinian population south from the northern part of Gaza and are ready to implement President Trump's deportation or immigration policy. This has not been officially sanctioned by the Israeli government, and one wonders how this is being conveyed to the troops.
Indeed. Well, it did mention, however, that that territory would be added to a security belt in the surrounding vicinity of the Gaza Strip. To what degree, of course, does that go in line with what the Security Cabinet has implemented thus far, or directed thus far, is indeed a question mark, and we'll have to wait and see what are the discussions that are going to ensue in Jerusalem. Now, we have two additional guests for today's update, to include Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish, the commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense, and Colonel in Reserve Reuven Ben Shalom, who is a cross-cultural strategist, as well as a long list of other things, positions. We won't go into your entire curriculum vitae at this point, but I'd like to start with General Gavish, if you may give us 2 cents with regard to the Gaza Strip, and then we'll immediately follow to Colonel Ben Shalom.
Well, Jonathan, I think that Amir said it right. I mean, there are now the statements, but really the devil is in the details, and we would have to see what exactly does it mean, how the plans would look like. So I think that at least at this point, what we could say is that the IDF in general is hiring the level of pressure on the Hamas with the strikes from the air, with the forces that are in the ground. And this is basically what we are seeing. And the whole defense establishment in Israel still think that this would be the way today to bring back the Hamas to the negotiation table, and going back to the effort made by Mr. Witkoff.
Israel, of course, has reiterated, also in Defense Minister Katz's statement, its adoption of the proposal by U.S. presidential envoy Steve Witkoff and highlighted that, again, this prerequisite or this equation that Defense Minister Katz mentioned has to do with so long as Hamas does not accept the proposal, meaning that the proposal is on the table. Colonel?
Well, unfortunately, one of the characteristics of this war is that we, the public and the world, have to always decipher what's going on according to bits and pieces of information. So once in a while, there's going to be a statement by the Prime Minister, then a video clip by Minister Katz, and of course, things as they develop on the ground. Perhaps there could be also positive reasons for operational security, for instance, that you don't want to tell the enemy exactly what you're going to do. But this is what's happening now, too. They made it look as if it came to a certain point where suddenly the government launched the IDF and said, okay, now carry out airstrikes. Of course, this is not exactly the way it really happened. This was a long and meticulous plan made by the IDF throughout the ceasefire. Of course, the IDF was preparing for the day that it will be ordered to do so. So it's a very, very deliberate plan. And the fact also that it's not launching full divisions into a total maneuver, it's also very similar to previous actions where you can see stepping up operations. And also it's easy to understand why this is just mounting pressure in order to bring back to the negotiation table. What we don't see now is Israel saying, that's it, negotiations over. We're never going to get back hostages through negotiations. It's only going to be military might. No, it's just saying that in the tools of negotiation, since Hamas are refusing to move forward, and remember, Hamas is saying very clear, we will return the hostages only if you end the war, promise you'll end the war, and even have international guarantees that the war is over. Of course, Israel will never enable such a thing. So what it is now, it's a means of negotiations through pressure. With what's happening on the ground now, just to relate to that, true that through this rhetoric, it seems like this is a threatening annexation. Here, I would say that nothing is permanent. Anything done or said now is not permanent. Even these ideas floated by President Trump that many see them as only a threat or only a means to trigger other ideas, all is to be part of this big mix to see where it moves forward. For us, the main goal now is to return the hostages. And what I believe what should be done is to put that top priority, have all the rest, and also fulfilling the goals of the war as second phase.
One of the points also mentioned by the defense minister, if I may add, has to do with implementing President Donald Trump's plan, something that, of course, may raise a lot of questions. There were reports coming out of Lebanon that Egypt even had agreed to adopt some 500,000 Palestinians into the northern Sinai. Immediately thereafter, Egyptian authorities came out and rejected that report as false. But nonetheless, there are a lot of circulating statements on that, Mr. Owen.
Well, one wonders why Israeli soldiers, reserve as well as regular, would have to risk their lives and the lives of the hostages in the service of President Trump's plan. This is unheard of. Israel was never like that, and Israelis would rise up in arms if what Katz said turned out to be really Israel's policy of evicting, deporting Palestinians. Of course, the cover is that they are going to do it out of their own volition. But this is not what the Israeli policy has been up to now. And Israel being a democracy, it must rest on the consent of the governed. Also, regarding the annexation of parts of Gaza, so first of all, Katz made a mistake by equating Hamas with Gaza. He said Hamas will lose all of these territories. No, Gaza will lose the territories. Hamas is supposed to be losing all of its power over Gaza, but the territories do not belong to Hamas. And also, there is no outside, no world support for Israel annexing any Palestinian territory, be it in the West Bank or in Gaza.
With that being said, Hamas continues to control the Gaza Strip, both militarily and from a civilian perspective, utilizing predominantly the humanitarian aid that it's managed to accumulate over a very long period of time and selling that back to the Gazan population with a quite substantive tax added to that, making billions upon billions of dollars. Israel, of course, after the 42-day ceasefire phase one has ended the influx of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip since, according to Article 23 of the Geneva Convention, these aid is diverted, of course, to the enemy, which therefore grants Israel the capacity under international humanitarian law to stop all aid from entering. But nonetheless, General Gavish, let's look a little bit broader into the circumstances of the Gaza Strip. What can we see from Egypt on the one hand and Jordan on the other, trying to figure out how they are going to approach? Naturally, we're seeing a lot of frustration with the current state of play, laying the blame on Israel rather on Hamas that refused the proposals outlined by the United States.
And unfortunately, it's not the first time that they are blaming Israel from what is happening, and not the Hamas, at least not publicly. We have to remember that each one of them have his own interest. Jordanians don't really want, a vast number of Gazans from the reason that we know that the Bedouins are already a minority over there. And of course, for them, it could be very challenging to have more Palestinians refugees within Jordan, and so on. Of course, the official reason is that they want the Palestinians in Jordan, in the Gaza Strip, to stay in the Gaza Strip. But I think there is a big concern over there. Same with Egypt. They have enough challenges within the Sinai Desert, and for their point of view, if it would stay there, it would be for their benefit. We have to remember that, even if we go back to the history, Israel was willing to give back the Gaza Strip to Egypt. They didn't want it as part of the peace agreement. So nothing changed from this point of view. Both of them, and probably of a lot of other Arab countries, they prefer that the Palestinians will stay in Gaza Strip and not to have them in their own territories.
Colonel Ben Shalom is one of the leading experts on Egypt, from my perspective, at least from what I know. What can you tell us with regard to the current complexities and Egyptian perspectives to the challenges at hand?
Well, just like Doron said, every country looks out for its interests. Sometimes I envy other countries that can set very clear interests, red lines, declare them, and just expect everyone to respect it. And we do, by the way, respect the interests of our neighbors. And Egypt and Jordan declared from the very beginning, not one refugee will set foot here, period. We're not going to let them in. We understand that Egypt and Jordan don't care much about the Palestinians and certainly not about Gaza. Yet the external rhetoric that we see will always be totally different. This is a parallel universe, mostly for internal consumption. Remember that you have millions of people that hate our guts, watch Al Jazeera, have very powerful narratives about Israel and about what's going on. But bottom line, as far as how Egypt and Jordan see Gaza and even see the future of Gaza, I believe that we see eye to eye. From Iran to its proxies, I think we see things exactly in the same way. Hamas is seen as a terror organization, just wreaking havoc and bringing misery to the Palestinian people. So I think also moving forward, this has to be together. Remember that for us, for all of us actually, the day after, even though not defined according to Gaza, the day after regionally is very clear. We have to continue the momentum of the Abraham Accords. The strategic peace that we have with Jordan and Egypt has to be continued forward and broaden and go to normalization with Saudi Arabia. There should be a bright future here. And out of the depths of this horrible war, there's also we see the potential. It's within reach. So everything that we discuss now about Egypt and Jordan has to take that in mind. I'll only point out at the end that when the world talks about Gaza being an open air prison or those kind of anti-Israel narratives, or even talking about this humanitarian situation in Gaza. Remember that Gaza borders Egypt, and there's a crossing going into Egypt. And in the past and also in the future, Egypt will be a very important component about what happens inside of Gaza. But moving forward, this has to be together in a collaborative manner with our regional and our international partners.
Well, one of the key challenges to Egypt, which I do agree, it's a very important component to regional stability, as well as to the stability of the state of Israel in particular. It is being hit hard, so to speak, by the ongoing blockade on the strategic Strait of Bab el-Mandeb by the Iranian proxy Ansar Allah, which is dominated, of course, by the Houthi tribe in Yemen. And yesterday evening, when I got home relatively early to see my kids, immediately upon arrival, I had to pick them up and go to the bomb shelter. And therefore, I'd like to turn to you, General Kavish, to clarify to us what's the situation on that front.
Well, indeed, Jonathan, I think that we have to separate the Houthi I would say, two different issues. One of them is the decision of the United States to change its strategy and to be more powerful and to project power on the offensive side. We have to remember that it was not like this in the previous administration, and we see a change here, by the way, signaling the Houthis, but also the Arab state in the region that United States is willing to put some efforts in order to deal with the challenges within our neighborhood. This is something very important, and also signaling to the enemies in this region that the United States is here, and of course to Russia and China. So this is, I think, one perspective. The other perspective is what we as Israel, we are seeing from the Houthis. They said that once we'll go back to the fight in Gaza, they would shot at us missiles, and this is unfortunately what we are seeing in the last few days. And yesterday, when you took your kids on this, we have to say that from the Israeli point of view, we said more than once that we would prefer that the international community led by the United States would take care of the Houthis and the Houthis' threat, because this is an international issue, and the Houthis' behaviors are affecting all the region and even more than that. And from the Israeli point of view, of course, the offensive, or at least strikes, it is an option on the table. We did it in the past. And the last thing I would say for the defense, we have to remember that unfortunately we are quite experienced with that. We had hundreds of UAVs that, and some of cruise missiles that were shot toward Israel. The vast majority of them were intercepted. We had tens of ballistic missiles that were shot toward Israel. Here too, the multi-tier defense of Israel intercepted the vast majority of them. Having said that, we always say that this is not hermetic. We already suffered two of these warheads that did landed in Tel Aviv and Ramat Gan, doing some significant damage. So we always say it's a specific statement, but very important to remember that the Israeli civilians are needed to listen to the issues, to the orders that are being issued by the Home Front Command, and the combination of the active defense and the passive defense. This is what allows us a minimum damage in life, for sure.
Mr. Oren, the United States reportedly informed Israel that it should stay out of it, and that it should let the United States deal with the Houthis themselves. What can you tell us about that?
Well, this is true. And, General Gavish and his colleagues do not always, in their official announcements of Houthi missiles being intercepted outside the borders of Israel, as the official announcement put it, they don't always say who was behind the intercepts, were it the Israelis, the Americans, or others. But it does seem that for the first time since 1956, Israel has outsourced some of its defense to others. Now, one may see it as a positive sign of a coalition being formed, of an alliance, but nevertheless, it means that Israel is telling the world and the region that it does not have the power to defend itself everywhere at once on all fronts, and that it is necessary for it to fall on outside help. This is not a positive signal. Let me also add regarding the Trump plan of taking Gazans out of the strip in order to clean it up and reconstitute it. One aspect of this plan, which is almost never talked about, is what is going to be the status of the 2 million Gazans or 1 million or whatever number are going to end up in other countries. If they are going to stay refugees forever and not being represented in the governments of their host countries, we are only going to push the problem into the future without solving it, because they will remain bitter, they will try to go back, they will plot against the host countries. So on this aspect alone, if you don't have the citizenship of the country where you live in, if you're a second-class resident of this country, you can expect more trouble later rather than putting an end to trouble.
Well, with regard to their status, I think they just should tick the box. It's complicated, and leave it at that. But beyond that, I think that President Trump was quite explicit that it is a temporary move, and that those same individuals would be resettled in a safe environment, so to speak. Whether or not they want to return, that's up to them. But he will adhere to international law based on American laws as well, as is the case. But nonetheless, I'd like to ask you, Colonel Ben Shalom, if we may return to the Houthi angle. The United States has been very clear when it comes to the Iranians that they should immediately halt their supply of munitions, intelligence, and other aspects in support of their proxy in Yemen. This morning, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei actually spoke to his followers, during the course of which he cast doubt about, he actually said, I don't know what a proxy means, and that he has no affiliation to the Yemenites whatsoever, and that the Houthis act on their own volition. If that's the case, shouldn't the Americans just move ahead and bomb every Iranian RGC component in Yemen immediately and just be done with it, since the supreme leader in the Islamic Republic has no idea that they're there?
Oh, this is complicated. First, after October 7th, as an Israeli, I can't say that we have brilliant intelligence. Well, we do have brilliant intelligence, but again, after October 7th, it's hard to say that because of the miserable failure that day. But everyone knows that we know things that are going on throughout the Middle East. Our prime minister said more than once that we know what's happening in downtown Tehran. So certainly we understand and we see and we know and we share and others share with us how Iran supplies their proxies. Multiple routes, sea, air, land, and there are many, many avenues that this happens. Talking about hundreds of tons, ships coming in, planes coming in, so we know how it works. So to come and say, we don't know how this, this isn't us, that's ridiculous. As far as the American rhetoric, I'll put it this way. Politics is very sensitive and very polarized these days everywhere. So whatever camp you're on, this is what you believe in every aspect. So now here there's a trap. If someone is against Trump or on the other side of the political map, what do you do when Trump says something that's positive for Israel? Because let's face it, these days now, militarily, strategically even, I would say, this powerful rhetoric by the US administration is very good for Israel. Because if America says, we're with Israel, we support Israel, by the way, we'll give them anything they need, that's it, we're behind. This bolsters Israel's activities in a way that we didn't have in the Biden administration. All this doesn't mean anything politically about other things. The last thing I want to warn is about President Trump to call things that he says plan. Remember that he also had a deal of the century that didn't make much sense and nothing came of that. On the other hand, you did have Abraham Accords under his auspices that were amazing. But now to say that Trump has a plan for evicting Gaza, I would be very careful. And even as far as what you said, Jonathan, he threw out something, said they'll never come back. But then when there was controversy around that, then things were backtracked by other speakers. I don't think there's a plan. I think it's something floated out there. Does he mean it? Does he not mean it? Does he mean this to trigger other discourse? I don't know. Personally, I think it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I think it's a good trigger maybe to push other mechanisms internationally and regionally to solve this problem of Gaza, mainly throw out Hamas and save the Palestinians from that brutal regime.
With regard to the so-called plan, it was unveiled on the 7th of March 2023. Yes, 7th of March 2023 by Kushner, the son-in-law of President Trump, who articulated it quite broadly. So there is a plan. Does it mean that it is set in stone? No, but there are discussions, and I caution people to take it seriously. And that is also what has been conveyed to me from Washington and elsewhere within the political circles in the United States. In one sentence, however, about the Iranian question that I posed to you with regard to Yemen, do you think that the United States should confront the Iranian elements in Yemen proper?
I think when the United States uses powerful rhetoric like they do and threaten and give red lines, they have to follow through. It has to be extremely powerful, decisive, very clear, and you can't say it's stronger than the administration says now, including external elements inside of Yemen. That threat has to be taken out.
Colonel Ben Shalom, General Gavish, and Mr. Oren, thank you so very much for all of your valuable insights. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well, and wish you immediately also a Shabbat Shalom from here in Jerusalem until our next updates. Shalom. For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.